What's up, Corey? How you doing?
Hey Pete, I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm liking your veranda.
Yeah, yeah, that's what we call it these days, huh?
Is that are you getting some sun?
Get a little
Making
bit.
sure.
I'm getting some heat. I'm staying inside from the sun though, because I don't want to get. I turn purple
Uh,
real fast. I go from bright white to bright purple.
let's not do that. Well, hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us. I am super juiced to be hanging out with Corey, one of my favorite sales authors, sales experts, sales thought leader, thought laggard. I'm not sure.
I don't
Um,
like that.
so
Summarizer of what I see. How about that?
summarizer, synopsizer,
Yeah,
synthesizer.
there we go.
My favorite sales synthesizer, one of my favorite sales synthesizers. So,
Like
folks,
Kirk Hammett.
we're going to be talking, we're going to talk about Corey here, about sales coaching and kind of coaching in general. But a couple of introductions here. For folks who don't know me, my name is Pete Kazanji. I'm one of the founders of Atrium. Atrium makes an AI sales management software that helps sales organizations and sales management improve the performance of their teams through the better application of data. Prior to starting Atrium, I started a recruiting software company called Talent Bin that was acquired by Monster Worldwide in 2014, and subsequent to that, wrote a book on startup sales called Founding Sales and started Modern Sales Pros. So that's a little bit on me. Corey, why don't you, for folks that don't kind of like incessantly see you posting on, wisdom on the interwebs and on LinkedIn and what have you, maybe you can kind of give folks a little bit of an introduction as to what you spend your time on right now, kind of like your background, etc.
Yeah, I'm the co-founder of Coach CRM. We're a software company that helps sales managers coach their teams and helps executives get more out of frontline managers, get the managers out of super closing and being data updaters and refocus their energy on diagnosing and prioritizing coaching opportunities, executing coaching conversations, driving accountability as they just build their teams up over time. We spun this out of my consulting firm Close Loop, where we wrote 8 books, developed triangle selling or sales methodology, and had a lot of fun, but realized that teams were struggling to really drive that frontline manager performance. And beyond the tech, we figured that we'd do something that was kind of a hybrid, work with the team through the coaching perspective, and then also put some software in place to help really make sure it lasts. And it's not just we go to training and learn how to coach and then we don't do it anymore. It's something that just continues to build on over time. So that's what we've been working on.
Got to make sure it sticks. Got to make
Yeah,
sure.
it's gonna stick. It's not an event.
Got to be a habit. Got to be workflowized. All that good stuff. Before we kind of get into that, what are your favorite books on coaching? Not sales books. Not sales coaching.
Books. My favorite book on coaching, the thing that really, well, 2 things. So, and this is completely off base, and I doubt most people listening to this have read either one of these, and so you'll probably jump into it. The Toyota Way by Jeffrey Liker and Out of the Crisis by W. Edwards Deming. Because
these count as coaching books. These are like scientific management books, but okay, go on.
But it goes back to they are management books, but I think the reason I like this is because most modern management books are based on Drucker, and Drucker says that you can't manage what you don't measure, and then that drives people into trying to manage towards outcomes. And if you manage towards outcomes, then people get confused on what they have to do. Whereas Deming's philosophy, in contrast to Drucker, was erase quotas, replace management with leadership, guide people, coach people. And he always said that 94% of the error comes from the system, 6% comes from the individual. And so those are the reasons why those books are so inspirational to me, because I think that if we're in a world where managers get put in this job because they were good at the prior job as an individual contributor, they're not trained in management, they're not trained in coaching, they're not trained in sales coaching, and they've just got to kind of do what they've observed and see what's going on. Well, guess what? These are solved problems in pretty much every other industry, every other workplace in the world. And so looking at it from that perspective, I think really just inspired me to say, wow, this isn't really that hard. It's a solved problem. We just need to put some 2mm shifts on it and make it work for sales.
Yeah, like why? I like the quote about the defect is with the system versus the defect is with the individual. So it's like, okay, well, like, what is the system? Oh, we don't have one. Oh, got it. You have a sales motion, but you have no sales management motion.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking individuals to just, derive that from whole cloth, seems like you may end up being disappointed. Okay, but
and your hiring system's broken, then your onboarding system's broken, and then what you said is broken. Now you've just made a copy of a copy of a copy of something that's bad, and then you just end up in a spot where the managers, they're given something to make the best of, but it's not that great in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. So if those non-traditional coaching books are your favorite coaching
anything
books,
traditional in my world, Pete.
what are your favorite books on sales coaching? I'll go first.
Yeah.
My favorite book, at least right now, on sales coaching is 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach, written by this guy named Hillman Sori and Cory Bray.
Yeah.
And we give out, so here at Atrium, we give out a lot of copies of 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach. And there's a number of reasons why I'm a big fan of 5 Secrets. One is it's written as a narrative, which one of the things that I've come to realize, because especially as we've added AI functionality to Atrium, which has historically been a sales analytics solution that use statistics in order to help pre-digest metrics and help managers understand progress towards goals, precursor goals, progress towards goals and kind of anomalies and what have you. But people like words, right? They think in words, they think in stories, right? They hate numbers. And 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach is written as a story, it's didactic narrative there. It's fantastic. So that's my favorite sales coaching book. Cory, do you have any other kind of recommendations on sales coaching books aside from 5 Secrets?
Well, we wrote it because we saw a gap in the market. I think that there's good books out there. Mark Roberge's sales management book is really good. I like that. I think it's got some good elements around coaching. But I think what I observed out there was that a lot of the folks that were writing about coaching, that were doing consulting projects around coaching, were overcomplicating the heck out of it. It's not that hard. The hard part is being able to diagnose and prioritize and find root cause. Executing the coaching conversation, driving accountability, it's simple if you have a simple framework to do it. So I think
it's simple, but like uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Or it's like, so I think that's actually a very important, like the phrase, one thing I've been kind of talking with my co-founder about recently, and I have a 6-year-old and he's doing soccer and he's doing basketball right now. Cory, you can do a little one-on-one with him when you're out here in SF next. Cory's giant, for anyone who hasn't met him, much larger than a 6-year-old. Is the difference between what I like to call like landing a triple axle, which is like a very high skill behavior, versus just like lacing your skates up or bringing your skates to the rink, which is not a high skill behavior. It is just a disciplined behavior, and it's a habituation behavior. And I think that your point is well taken, which is like, hey, like having a coaching conversation isn't necessarily, it's not like triple axles here, right? But people really shy away from things that make them uncomfortable or that they're not used to or what have you. Yeah. And so I guess like, what do you think gates managers from coaching behaviors in kind of like A, in sales organizations, or B, in like, kind of just like white collar environments?
Yeah, well, it's uncomfortable. So being uncomfortable prevents you from wanting to do it, because people tend to do what's easy and what's comfortable. Few things that make it uncomfortable. One is that whenever we work with managers and they're struggling to have these conversations with their team and shying away from them, I always ask questions like, what's the person's professional goals? What's the person's personal goals? And where have they been in their past? How have they been coached successfully in the past? And what type of approach, direct or indirect, resonates with them? What don't they like? And a lot of times when people are really having trouble with their team, they don't know the answers to these questions. And so that just kind of sets them up for failure out of the gate, because they don't know how to incorporate the individual's why into the coaching. And they don't know how to draw on the person's past experience around, oh, they played football and this coach yelled at them every day and it just broke them apart and they hated it. Or they played basketball and this coach yelled at them and it really motivated them and they like the concise feedback system. And so all of a sudden you say, oh, okay, so now I've got some more context around how to coach this person. That's developing comfort. I know this person wants to go into management. I can put things in the context of what they'll need to do in the future to show them why it matters that what we're doing. And so, okay, that creates a little bit of comfort. And then the last thing I'd say is that around the diagnosis of what's the most important, biggest impact, or maybe just a quick win if we're trying to knock something out. What is that one thing that we can coach on now? If you don't have a good grasp of what the universe of things could be, and you don't have a good grasp on how to really get to the root cause and say, well, there's all these little things, but if we summarize those up into a bigger thing, we can focus on it. For example, not asking good discovery questions, not handling objections well, not setting next steps well. Maybe we can just not focus on all of those and just say, let's focus on pre-meeting prep, which would cover all of those, but it's still just one thing. So the understanding of the individual and then also the understanding of the universe in which they diagnose coaching challenges, that's what makes it uncomfortable. And if you solve for that, it becomes more comfortable, easier to do, and people do it more often.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the latter thing. It's like the inventory, right? It's like the inventory, because this is the thing that I talk with folks, like whether it's like investors who like don't really know how like sales works or like sales organizations work.
Oh, you met that guy too? I know that guy.
Dave, I think. What is the old joke? Like when you're fundraising, are there going to be more women or are there going to be more guys named Dave? So, but specifically, like one of the jokes I like to say, and like this happens when we're selling to customers as well. One of the ways that Atrium works is, there's 100 pre-baked metrics kind of out of the box, but they're just like the metrics that matter. Like it turns out that every organization has like win rate matters, irrespective of whether you're selling, consulting projects or, rocket launches or, toilet plungers or what have you. Like win rate matters, or like customer facing meetings matter, et cetera, et cetera. And so one of the jokes we like to say is like, there's only a couple dozen ways in which like reps can kind of like be broken, if you will. It's not like hundreds, it's not 3, and it's not hundreds, it's a few dozen, right? Like and so I think your point is well taken, which is like if you understand kind of like the inventory of potential, there's like football moves and there's like coaching moves. It's like the inventory of coaching moves that can be done, then you're potentially more comfortable there. One thing, not to harp on 5 secrets of the sales coach, but here I go. I really liked what Cory said earlier around understanding the why around like, so one of the things that's really fantastic about 5 secrets of the sales coach is as you read through, it's like, oh, this is like a discovery conversation with reps, right? Like what's the why, what's the negative consequences associated with like inaction, what's the positive, what's the positive business outcome, but it's not a positive business outcome, it's a positive, rep outcome or whatever. Like, oh, okay, cool. You have $30,000 in college debt and you want to get out from under that. If you're not able to get out from under that, you're not going to be able to move out of, your current roommate situation. And like, that's the negative outcome. And then if you are able to do so, you can, move into your own place and, so on and so forth. Right. And so by understanding that why, and then being able to come back to it and say like, well, hey, Frank, refresh my memory, but I thought it, was really critical for you to be getting out from under this, this college debt. And the way that we're going to get there is we're going to raise this win rate here, because your win rate is about 30 or 40% lower than everybody else. And it really seems like like where we're struggling there is our conversion rate out of pilot. So we got to really just dig into what the issues are here, because like your conversion rate out of pilot as compared to everybody else's is off. I know that we can get there, and then if we do so, you're going to be able to stop hanging out in the animal house, and that like kind of takes it off of the manager of being like, I'm here to lord this over you, and it's like I'm here to help you move out of, your scrubby apartment that you want to get out of.
Exactly. So the manager knows, I love that. And the manager knows that. And then the other piece is a manager that has a company that runs pilots knows that why don't things move out of pilot the way that they should? Well, we probably didn't do good enough discovery prior to the pilot. We didn't disqualify folks that we shouldn't be working with. We didn't engage the right stakeholders. We didn't have expectations around what the pilot process was. We probably didn't have a mid-pilot check-in. We didn't have a pilot wrap-up. We didn't set good next steps coming out of the pilot. We didn't share pricing before the pilot. And those are just rattling off the top of my head. If the managers can't do that, if they can't just rattle what are the typical root causes of those win rates coming out of pilot off the top of their head, then they should have somebody that they could go look it up. And if they don't have any of that, then they're not going to be able to diagnose what to coach people on, and they're going to be stuck. And that's what keeps people from coaching, because they don't have the ideas of the plays on the field and what their inventory is, like you mentioned.
What are kind of good ways that you have seen to so we're talking about blockers, but now let's talk about kind of like measuring leading indicators. What are behaviors that you've seen in customers and kind of clients around encouraging and then also measuring a culture of coaching behaviers? Is it just kind of like, banging the gong every time you do a coaching move or what have you? How have you seen organizations do that?
So in terms of measuring that it's happening, or measuring the impact of it?
That it's happening.
Yeah.
First, we got to make sure that, like, I don't know, like, not to be on a football jag here, but like, the old joke with like running backs is like, you just keep your knees pumping.
Right.
Because if you're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to have forward motion. So like, first and foremost, is it happening? And then later we can see, is it happening in the way that like is driving appropriate outcomes?
Yeah, exactly. So the lawn guy just got here. Let me move. So
good old lawn guy.
Yeah, it comes right when I'm doing my peep meeting. Mm-hmm. So the one of the big things that we're doing with Coach CRM is giving the executives a dashboard to show coaching activity, and that's one of the critical things, is that has each manager diagnosed challenges for each rep? Have they understood what are the things that we want to work with them on? Second of all, have we prioritized those? What's the biggest impact down to what's the thing that's nice to have, whatever, we can do it later. And then in terms of executing on the coaching conversations, are we knocking out each one of those items? Are we making sure that, okay, that's solved for, that's solved for, that's solved for. Oh, and by the way, we're not just putting them in the trash. We're putting them in an archive where we can go back and revisit them periodically. And I'll tell you, this only works. I've only seen it work where the second line managers and above actually care about this. Yeah. Because you cannot delegate culture to the frontline management team. It won't work.
Yeah. I can't remember which customer I was talking with. Oh, I know what it was. So as we've gone from kind of like lower ASP, kind of like smaller organizations, to like much higher organizations, kind of in the 10, 20, 30, 40 manager organizations that we've been working with, one of the things that we've been adding to kind of our sales motion is a executive alignment step. And I was having this conversation with the COO of this like fairly large ad tech company, and she was asking, like, it was great. She was asking these like very provocative questions, because I showed up with all of our I loaded into my brain, and from a pre-call planning standpoint, right? And of course my colleague, the rep who's working on the deal, was like, hey, work in this customer story, this customer story, this customer story, and this customer story. And I was like, all right, I'm ready to go. Got them all dialed in. And so I'm deploying those. And then she asked me this question. She said, hey, where doesn't this work? Right? Where does this fail? And my honest answer to her was, I was like, well, in organizations of your size, and I don't think you guys have this problem, because of course I'd say that, it was when you don't have conviction, like when you don't have conviction from the CRO and the COO down, that like you can use data to measure and manage, and then moreover that is an important thing that you're going to do at the first line manager manager level, right? Like
Right.
the joke I kind of made, because she was saying, well, is this something that we can like just kind of tiptoe into, and can you like maybe crawl, walk, run? And I was like, I think for the most part, what ends up happening is if you're not like Cortez burning the ships and saying like, hey man, like this is actually like, this is important in our organization, right? Like in our organization, we manage with data, right? Like in our organization, we have conviction around coaching versus like, yeah, I mean, we're gonna try this, right? It's like
Yeah.
a new cologne. We're just gonna like, try it out. um and because then like our CSMs will be working with like, it's hard enough getting like 20 managers to manage by metric. It's another thing when like the CRO is like, yeah, I heard that math maybe worked for the Babylonians but not for us, right? And so I imagine it's probably pretty similar with coaching, where it's just like, if we're not going to have a culture of coaching and instead we're going to have a culture of super rep behavior, it's probably pretty tough to get like behavioral change at the manager level.
Yeah, for sure. And the biggest challenge for me has been, who owns coaching? It's a hard question, because here's who doesn't own coaching. Sales enablement doesn't own coaching.
No.
HR doesn't own coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Frontline managers don't own coaching. So is it the CRO? Do they truly own it? Or is it the CEO? The people that I've worked with that are the most passionate and the most rigorous around coaching are always CEOs who have worked in companies before that have great coaching cultures.
Mm-hmm.
And that's pretty much it. And then you end up in a spot where there's people that aren't at that level, that might be a director, might be a VP, might be a CRO, and they'll use it opportunistically, but they won't really drive culture and excellence around coaching. And if it's one of those things that you do, unless it's the last week of the quarter, unless it's the last month of the year, and in those places, oh yeah, we just throw it out the window, we just discount, then it breaks.
What can you think of organizations, like, it's so funny, like I can't think of, like, we're really blessed here at Atrium because we work with tons and tons of sales organizations. So like I can tell you the sales organizations that like really have their act together and the ones that like kind of don't.
Yeah.
And then the diasporas as well. So like I'll give you a great example. Like the box sales management diaspora is just like nails across the boards. Like every like former box sales leader you interact with, they're just extraordinarily like data driven and rigorous, and I think it really speaks to how that organization like selected for those folks, right? Like selected them in or like excluded other folks out, and then also just the culture of data driven management that they had there. I can't, like, if you put a gun, and I there's a bunch of others as well, but it's not coaching, right? It's more about like data driven management, which of course should have a behavior of coaching, but like usually the critical path around like data driven management is more around like being willing to consume data and like make judgments based on it. And then of course like the last mile is the coaching behavior. I can't think of an organization where you're like, hey, what's an organization that had an amazing like coaching culture? I would speak to like sports teams, right? Can you like think of like like organizations that have like really great coaching cultures that pop to mind?
In B2B SaaS, I don't think there are many, because you don't have to. Because here's the thing, in sports, you've got a scarcity mindset. One team wins, one team loses. For every minute I possess the ball in football, you don't possess the ball.
Okay.
Well, if you've got a world where SaaS is eating the world and a rising tide floats all boats, and the MarTech landscape goes from 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 companies, and they all have a viable path to get customers, and you've got a world where you can hire someone and they can win deals despite themselves, and you can promote someone to management and they can have people on their team win deals despite themselves. And sales methodology is something that you do sometimes, maybe, but it's not necessarily as rigorous as it could be. You don't live in this world where you've got a scarcity mindset. And I haven't worked in companies like IBM or Johnson & Johnson, but Schlumberger, Halliburton, places that have, large groups of folks that are hyper competitive, lower margins. But I've heard through my colleagues that those types of organizations absolutely do. But what you see there is longer tenures, higher levels of education coming into it. And I think it's just completely different. And if we're in a world where SaaS now has to be more focused on profitability, has to be focused on doing more with less, then it seems like this is a pivotal moment for companies to adopt more of a coaching culture.
Got it. So the answer to that is like, hey, like I haven't seen that in, modern sales organizations, but where it does show up is it shows up in the really cutthroat worlds of, sales organizations that, that are fighting over scarce, scarce like grocery
Yeah,
shelves,
right.
or like, hey man, like we're only choosing one turbo pump for this oil implementation or what have you, to your point about Halliburton and Schlumberger and what have you. That's interesting. And so I think that the thing that does pop to mind there is maybe some organizations that have had extraordinarily rigorous kind of like sales methodology, um, like rigor. So like PTC and, kind of folks like, and that diaspora. But I think the point is well taken, which is the fact that we can't really point to that. I think it kind of indicates an absence of that in the, in our market. I think the other thing that I would kind of cite here as well is, I wonder how to get beyond this, is this, like the joke I always like to say is every time Tom Brady, and I guess I needed like a new kind of like quarterback, because
Someone
like
who's under 45.
he's like not a quarterback anymore or whatever. Like I don't know who's
Joe
amazing.
Burrow. Joe Burrow.
Jalen Hurt, right?
Yeah.
Like every time Jalen Hurt comes off the field, like he's immediately with his coach, and they're like looking at exactly what went down in the prior series, right? And
on iPads,
deep
on into analytics.
Yeah, just like and like nobody's grumpy, right?
No.
Nobody's like, oh no, right? Are you saying that, like, I'm not perfect? And it's like, yeah, man, because like you're out there with a bunch of like giant men trying to like run you over, so like of course things are going to get messy.
Yeah.
And I wonder what ways there are to kind of like help imbue that sort of behavior in kind of like white collar white collar professional environments, wherein coaching behavior of course like indicates a lack,
Yeah.
right, and like an opportunity cost, and so how can you get staff out of the mindset of like, this is me being like attacked, versus like, hey, no, like everyone can always be better at things, and like let's talk about how that call could have been better, not because like you're like a bad person or what have you, but because like we all want to get better. Yeah, I wonder like how you systematize that. I guess it maybe kind of goes back to the coaching culture and like, putting points on the board and celebrating like coaching behaviors.
It's absolutely that, but I think it's also what we talked about earlier around knowing their why and knowing their future career progression. Because look, the folks that are individual contributor salesperson people, 99.99% of them are not Jalen Hurts. They're still in the minor leagues, and they might be in an SMB role, they might be a mid-market role, they might be in an enterprise role where they're ramping up. But unless they're out there putting 200% up quarter after quarter after quarter, at which point they're probably either getting poached, retired, or going into management or starting their own company or something like that. They're working their way towards something else professionally. And if you can put what they're doing in the context of that. So for example, the other day I was working with a team and they had some folks struggling with objection handling. And anytime someone tells me they're struggling with objection handling, I'm like, well, that's not really what they're struggling with. Let's hear what their agenda was. So what happened is you took somebody who was an SMB seller who was typically working with one person on the other end of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 3 people showed up. Seller got flustered, didn't ask everybody's agenda. So instead of saying, hey, it looks like we got 3 people on the call today, can we go around the horn and just give me your name, your role, and what you want to cover in the meeting today? Didn't do that. Just jumped into a demo. And then guess what happened 15 minutes in? Well, I don't know how this is relevant to me. Of course you don't, because nobody actually covered who the heck you are, what you wanted to cover in the meeting today. Mm-hmm. So when you look at that, well, what's this person want to be when they grow up? Do they want to be selling a widget to one person? Or do they want to be doing bigger deals where, from time to time, there might be 3 to 5 to 10 people on the other end of the line? Well, if we put it in the context of that, and showing that that's how they make more money and work towards their professional goals, then all of a sudden the coaching conversation becomes around, here's how I'm guiding you to that next level. And we're not calling them minor leaguers. We're not calling them single A players. But at the end of the day, that's really what they are. They're people that are in a role today that is great. You know, if you played minor league baseball, good on you. You're better than me. And they're working their way to a higher level. And if we know what those competencies are that are required at the higher level, we know where they're at with them today, then we can develop them over time and give them the opportunity to practice on the playing field. Because one of the things I said in the sales enablement playbook was minor league baseball players don't shag balls, they play baseball. And they play baseball and they get coached on how to play baseball better. And eventually they move up to the next level.
Yeah. I think one thing that so like you can have individuals who are like, or like you can provide that kind of coaching of the coaches, like, hey, get back to like what this person's trying to do and contextualize that. But I think that it does require measurement. And, you know, again, I'm a broken record. I'm a big fan of Bill Walsh's The Score Takes Care of Itself, right? So like, don't measure touchdowns. Let's measure first downs, right? Don't measure let's measure how do we get first downs? Well, we gain 4 yards. And so just kind of some kind of tactics to recommend to folks is, and I do this, you know, we have like 5-ish leaders here at Atrium, some of whom are in kind of the first time management roles, what have you. And so the places where we look to like score points is, you know, celebrating publicly. And even though this isn't like private coaching, which I think is really important, but there's like this converse thing, which is putting an example up there of what good looks like.
Yep.
And that like sets the tone there. Cause I think, so I'll kind of give you some examples of this. Like anytime we have a behavior on our team where someone does, you know, a football move that's like particularly well done, right? Like, oh man, this rep right here has developed like a fantastic, you know, texting relationship with his, you know, with his champion, is developing his champion really well. Great. Here's a bunch of screenshots of like iMessage conversations with the champion in question, and we're gonna jump that into the kudos channel here and say, hey, this is the behavior, right? Like this is the behavior that we're looking for here, to then, you know, generalize that to the rest of the team. So there's kind of two things here, and it's actually funny. So it's one thing to have the manager do that, but as a leader, oftentimes what you have to do is, if a manager tells you that like that they gave good private, like they saw some good behavior on the part of an individual, oftentimes what you have to do as a leader is you have to say, hey, you need to package that as a case study and put it out here, right? Because then what ends up happening is like all sorts of wonderful things come out of that. One, that rep who did that behavior, and that behavior might have been uncomfortable to that rep, might have been easy for him, but like maybe it was uncomfortable. He now is like, look at that, I just got lionized for that. One. Two, all the other reps see, oh, that's what that, you know, that's an example of something that we reward in the organization, such that when the manager shows up and says, hey, you need to do XYZ, it's not like confusing because he's seen it out in the world, like, oh, okay, that's right, just like that thing got celebrated over here. And then there's like a meta level to it as well, which is there's like actually that whatever the skill was, like, you know, texting with your champion or developing a good texting relationship with your champion. And then there's a secondary thing, which is like, hey, we celebrate, right? We celebrate things. Like we celebrate things like good, but not just not like, oh, yay. Like, you know, you sent a follow-up email, congratulate within like 30 minutes. Like, yay, you like you breathed.
You did your job. Yay.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not that. It's like, hey, here's this like really great, like, hey, we celebrate that. Oh, you know what I should do? I should look to do my behaviors very well.
Yeah.
In which case I might end up on that pedestal as well. And then the last thing that I think is really important, this is why as a leader, oftentimes what you have to do is you have to like grab your kind of first line folks and be like, hey, we need to be more vocal about celebrating these things, because then what ends up happening is all the other first line managers see it and they're like,
Sure.
that's what I'm supposed to do too. Right. And so, like, I just wanted to take everyone through kind of like that cascade of all those positive outcomes of like creating these and these are not like big case studies, but essentially doing kind of like one-off case studies and then making sure that that's happening on a recurring basis. But now the important thing is like, it can't be like, it can't be like, oh, congratulations, so-and-so, got out of bed in the morning, whatever. It actually has to be something very, or else you run the potential risk of like, oh, cool, like we celebrate, perfunctory performance, right? So that's one thing that I like to do with my managers, is make sure that we're doing that in order to systematize a behavior of kind of coaching, like public coaching in the positive case here, because that like it puts it in the water, if you will.
Yeah, totally. That's how you build culture.
Yeah.
That's
What
great.
any kind of recommendations you might have around like systematizing these sort of things?
So you touched on something I want to elaborate on that ties directly to this, which is getting the managers to collaborate with each other. A lot of companies, they didn't get the memo that, hey, the manager has two teams. They've got the people that work for them, and then they've got their peer group of managers. And the peer group of managers is such a critical component of this. So if they're not having consistent roundtables where they're sharing their challenges, their wins, how they're overcoming those, and then working together as a manager level, and they don't even have to be in the same department. They can be, because they're managing people. It's nice if you've got the sales management group, but then the broader management group. Think what happens if each frontline manager thinks they live in a silo. And this is what often happens. And all of a sudden they feel like the weight of the world is on their shoulders. They might not be great at managing up, or maybe their manager isn't that great. And all of a sudden they end up in a spot where they're stuck in the mud. Well, the way you get them out of that is by creating a culture where they work together as a frontline management team, and they learn from each other, and there's intentionality around that. And I think as the senior leaders I've worked with that force that, it just, great things happen.
That's a really great point. Like, yeah, it's at that first line manager level, engendering or encouraging creativity and kind of like sharing their, it's kind of reminiscent of Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of the team.
I think that's where I got it from.
Yeah, but like, there's team one, the leadership team, and this is something that Kyle Porter is a big kind of proponent of. But I think it's kind of like, hey, you got like the frontline manager squad here, and making sure that they're kind of collaborating there. I think one thing that we've seen quite a bit, and this is part of the things that has shifted us from these like smaller organizations to these larger organizations that have 5, 10, 20 managers or what have you, is this notion of, once you get to a certain size of organization, it becomes very important to have a consistent managerial playbook. Versus just everyone kind of doing it artisanally, if you will, right? And so that means like, hey, here is our operating rhythm. Like, this is the rough agenda, or this is what the agenda of a team meeting looks like. We have 6 SDR teams, right? Each of which has 8 reps on this. So we're not going to have a single meeting with like 40 people in it, because that'd be bananas. Instead, what we're going to have is on Monday, everyone's going to have their individual kind of like team meetings there. But like, this is what the agenda is going to look like for each of those 6 teams, right? Like, and you might do some sort of variation on a theme in there or whatever. Cool. So that's that. And then this is what a pipeline review looks like, using whatever sales methodology we have. And then, by the way, this is what a coaching one-on-one looks like, right? Where it's not deal centric, but instead it's metric centric and like behavior centric and rep centric, what have you. And then these are the assets that are used within that. A lot of organizations, this is something that like accidentally stumbled upon as we started working with larger organizations was they asked us, hey, we've got like 10 managers. Can you help us folder and like bucket all of our Atrium assets in a way such that it's like, this is this initiative, this is this initiative, this is this, etc. And that really starts becoming really problematic once you get into large organizations. So if you're at the point where you have like 4 or 5 managers and like you don't have that operating rhythm kind of like declared, if you will, there's probably an opportunity there to put some structure into place. Now, as you were kind of pointing out, yeah, you want to have the managers like collaborating together, but that doesn't mean like they're collaborating together like Jackson Pollock style with just like a blank canvas. Well, like you want to have a framework to start.
And here's the thing, right? All of the things we're describing right now should be the function of the sales enablement team. That's the group of people that has the bandwidth to go out and think about this, put it together, whatever. But when you're in a world where companies aren't hiring sales enablement folks with that skill set, with that mandate, holding them accountable to doing these types of things, it's not going to happen. And I think that any executives watching this that are frustrated with their sales enablement team because they're hanging out, onboarding new hires, coaching SDRs, and fiddling around with SMB account executives to teach them how to sell 101. Well, You've got all these super high opportunities, massive opportunities to develop senior sellers, frontline managers, and second line managers. And these are the folks that if you do some of the things that Pete and I are talking about today, it's going to have massive impact, lasting impact. Whereas, little Timmy that won't make cold calls, trying to convince him to make cold calls, why is that where your sales enablement resource is going as opposed to something like this to create a really strong management culture?
Yeah, it's the system you were talking about, like the Deming comment.
94%. Like, this is it.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a fact. Yeah, like versus being like the temp of like or the slice of the manager.
Yeah.
Like the manager is not going to, coach the rep on cold calling. I'm going to bring in, Susan or Jeff or whatever to do that for me. Whereas it would be preferable for Jeff to be orchestrating like a coaching cadence or a manager, like a sales management motion versus doing the actual, it's kind of like, it's like managers, instead of like being the super rep and like doing the deals, it's like, hey man, stop being the super manager. Like, hey, Mr. Sales Enablement, manager, or Ms. Sales Enablement Manager, instead of being the super manager and coming in and doing the management for the manager, why don't we manage the managers or coach them, like, facilitate a system for the managers to do that coaching behavior.
Yeah.
Where have you seen, but I guess that's actually really interesting because like, I think that what that kind of then points to is sales enablement leadership that have previously been like sales leaders. And I think that that's oftentimes not really a background that you see there. I'm totally spacing on the gentleman's name, but
Paul Butterfield came from sales management. Jody Maxson,
right? That's
currently
Paul is who I'm thinking of at Instructure.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's
the problem is that you can't get these folks for $110,000 salary. And so all of a sudden you're like, oh, let's get the people that flunked out of BDR last year and let them make content and then have someone else train. And that's what there's a crisis in sales enablement right now. And this is why. And there's a lot of great people doing a lot of great work, but at the same time, they're not put in a position for success like we've been talking about throughout the whole session today, where they've got an idea of what's the biggest opportunity for impact and what can I do to achieve it. And I just think that the onboarding and stuff like this, they buy the learning management system and then spend all the time building content out in the learning management system. Then I go in, with my firm Close Loop and do an audit, and like people don't actually complete the content. And then we do an assessment on if they actually know the stuff. They don't know it. And then we go look at the call recordings. They're not doing it. And then the managers, their engagement with the call recording software is not anywhere near what it was supposed to be. And so this whole system, Deming, 94% of error comes from the system, 6% comes from the individual getting that system set up. And so it's just humming. And if we just focus on the manager and getting them in a position where they can diagnose and prioritize opportunities, execute coaching conversations, hold folks accountable, and then have fluency around the metrics, what to look at, what that means, sales methodology, how people can actually move their mouths. And so we're not coaching outcomes. You're in a pretty good spot.
True. You make it sound so easy, Cory. You make it sound so easy. Um, you have a book coming up that you're working on.
I do.
Can you talk about that at all,
Yeah,
or you want to hide the ball on us?
No, I'll talk about it. We're working on a book on frontline sales management. I don't know what it's going to be called. That's just the working title because I'm not good at marketing. And so we're really going for
burn the ships.
Burn the ships. It's going to be a handbook.
Coaching with conviction.
It's going to be short. It's going to be concise. It's going to be like 30 chapters, probably 4 to 5 pages per chapter. And the goal is for a first-time manager, second-time manager to be able to pick it up and have actionable outcomes for any topic that they uncover in their management role. And for VP, CRO, CEO to be able to hand this to the frontline management team and say, what you need's in here. And then they can coach to it. And then we've got more in-depth resources on the website. So it's not theory, it's not background, it's not history, it's actionable frameworks. And then if they need stuff that backs it up, that gives it more depth, then those will all be offered for free on the resources site.
I love it. Sounds like we're gonna have a new book to send to our Atrium customers. It'll be like a twofer. It'll be 5 secrets of the sales coach plus the burn the boats.
Yeah.
Sales coaching with conviction handbook.
And I got this really cool guy to write my foreword for me. I can't remember his name. I think his name's Pete, maybe.
I'm really excited about it because I couldn't agree with you more that there's more opportunity around. It is kind of crazy now that I have this 6-year-old doing soccer and doing basketball, and it's like amazing to see what happens in the absence of coaching, in the absence of like a performance culture. Yep. And again, this is like 6-year-old, so I'm not trying to like make it sound too crazy, but it's like, I don't know, we're all just kind of like grown up like little kids, right? And so it's just like, becoming very, very clear to me how important team cohesion and and then like the correction and like coaching is because in the absence, like entropy just shows up. Yeah. Right.
Well, silly example here. If we're going to spend an hour with the team, what would be more impactful? To go spend an hour with a little Timmy, 6-year-old Timmy, and tell him to stop chasing butterflies, or spend an hour with the coach and help develop strong soccer coaching skills? If we put it that way, I'm pretty sure everybody knows the answer to this question, and it's no different with the sales team.
Bless up. Well, Cory, thank you for spending the time with us to talk about sales management and sales coaching. Folks, you should definitely give Cory a follow on LinkedIn. Do check out 5 Secrets of the Sales Coach. It's fantastic. Or not, just wait for the next one to ship, and then Atrium will send you 2 of the copies together, because that's what we do. We're the the unofficial closed loop book distribution company. Goes along with our data driven sales management software. Cory, thank you very much for spending the time with us today, and for everybody, please stick around for, I'm not sure exactly what the next session is, but I'm sure it's going to be similarly awesome. Thanks a lot, Cory. Have a great rest of your day. Okay.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.